And when he eventually had to recall them for the Bishops' War in 1639, well, he tried to get rid of them again. At first he just tried to bully them, they wouldn't do it. Then he tried to menace them by trying to arrest 5 of the most prominent members. They ran, they hid, they got away from him. And Charles knew that he had played his hand too openly. You have the cavalry, the artillery, and the infantry. The cavalry were considered the most elite. They were considered the gentlemen. They were all sons of gentlemen or gentlemen themselves before they finally gave up and turned round. And this took the cavalry out of the equation. At the beginning of the English Civil War period, the Royalist cavalry was very good indeed. Or perhaps with the Dutch forces against the Spanish, or the Germans against the Swedes. The Royalist horse, many of them emulate Prince Rupert, one of the great cavalry commanders of all time, and a very gallant gentleman indeed. It really should be. It's one of the great guidelines of war. Don't attack up a hill. Don't try and take a fortified position up a hill if you can avoid doing so, because otherwise you'll suffer tremendous casualties. Now, we've already mentioned the cavalry, the fact they were all gentlemen, the fact that they were very well off, and that they had a problem with discipline quite a lot of the time, that they would want to fight other gentlemen. One of the other arms is the artillery. And they were often given religious names like St. Peter and St. Paul, or Barak, or Gothmog. Once again, the parliamentary troopers charging up there. So these men were trained to use guns. There was also gunners from the ships of the very small navy. And the artillerymen manned a huge variety of guns. You had 20 of the guns called robinets, small field pieces, mounted powder, generated by the artillery, and the rifles and muskets was phenomenal, and would drift over the battlefield and would have the large coloured flags, the standard, the regimental colours, and they're vital for the regiment because they can see them and they can reform on them after they've been into a pike push. Now you can see that the parliamentary commander, he's standing in the centre here, right in front of me, and he's there with his staff, and he's got one of his runners, he's got his colours with him, the colours of the Commonwealth, Committee of the Two Kingdoms. You can see it being held aloft there. Beat off the cavalry. And you should see it again any minute now, because there's a cavalry melee, and he has other staff members there as well. And he is directing the battle. He's decided to put a lot of his weight up on the right flank. His right flank and the Royalists' left flank. Dangerous, they got no pikemen to protect them. It's been a hard fight. Some of the parliamentary troopers have come out of the fight because they've realised that there is possibly a way that they can attack the Royalists without the Royalist cavalry interfering. But the Royalist cavalry are very good. They were very well trained and very brave gentlemen as well they were too. But like I was saying about the old brave men, the pikemen, you can see the runner there taking his life into his hands by running up there. It's a very dangerous thing to do, the running. And there's cavalry coming along, the runner being very cautious. He's hoping that he's going to be able to make it into the pike block there and gain some protection. Got his sword drawn, which is always a good thing to do. They're not aiming the points of the pikes at the men on the horses. Now, if any of you love animals like I do, you're not going to find this next bit very appetising. They are aiming at the breastbone of the horse. They intend to kill the horse, which then throws the rider, and then they can kill the rider. It's a sad but savage fact of life in the 17th century. If you took out just the rider, another rider could be found to get on the horse. If you took out the horse and the rider, that was it. A true one, as far as animals in the 17th century were concerned. Was a mass cannonade by the parliamentarian heavy battery there. No matter how hard they tried, they just simply couldn't dislodge them. And they gave a brilliant account of themselves that day. Right here in front of you, ladies and gentlemen, and you can see fighting going on. And they were called melees because it's a word that means confusion. Every man trying to kill the other man, and it's very difficult to kill them. They were well armoured, and they also were at the same level of skill with a sword. One of them has been wounded, and you can see the cavalry cornet there. That's the small flag he's carrying. They were trying to take that, but he managed to fight them off. The parliamentarian force this time is very fortunate, and he is determined to get them. Now we talked about the pikeman, the pike that he carries, the fact that he wears an armour, but he is still the premier arm of infantry in the 17th century. And the pikeman fighting, and that's the kind of fighting that went on underneath that canopy of pikes. Now, of course, it's very important to mention this, ladies and gentlemen, and that is the pikeman would quite often cut 2 feet off the end of his pike to make it 16 foot long, because it was a lot easier to carry. And again, there's a large melee happening there. And they're trying to force the issue, they're trying to force a way. And at the moment, it's really very much the Royalists' fight. They're able to stop anything that comes against them. Flourishing the colours. They did that so they could say, we're staying here, we're not moving, and we're not afraid of you. They believed it, they shout it out to offend the other side, who would do exactly the same thing in return. The loss of limbs, all kinds of things, but they didn't actually die en masse from being killed instantly on the battlefield. They died sometime later whilst lying on the field wounded. That is actually more than died in the Great War of 1914-1918. It's a phenomenal amount of people to die in that kind of thing. I drive them from the field. And the numbers game certainly is going in favour of the Royalists here. The Royalists have got the numbers advantage, they've got the height advantage, they're on top of the hill. Under General Taylor, looking down at General Foster and thinking, you will not be able to take this position. We are too heavily the sconces to try and drive us out. And time after time, they load their artillery and they fire. And as he takes the water, it looks like that was the last thing he did. And there's soldiers falling all over the field now. The fighting has become more active. You can hear the drums beating up, beating the orders. Attack, retreat, attack. And again, a fight developing up there on the ridge between some of the musketeers, and you notice that they're wearing russet red coats. Well, those red-coated musketeers would go on in 1645 to form the new model army of the Royalist forces, and they are running pell-mell off the field. The artillerymen will not stay, not without powder for their guns. And this has given them the perfect opportunity. Colonel Foster cannot believe his luck. His men are chasing up the field now. With no powder left. They either surrender or they will be slaughtered. It looks like the Royalists have all completely run, except for the blue coats. They may have given their parole, they may be surrendering. But of course, ladies and gentlemen, there's two sides to any battle.